What an honor it is to be with you. Thank you to these gentlemen for this. Thank you for this honor to President Koss, to the trustees of this fine university, to the faculty, to the staff, to the parents, to the guests, and most of all to you, the graduates. What an honor it is for me to join you today, tied to this great university. The question that you'll get today and going forward is, what are you going to do now? You just finished college, you're ready to go out in the world. What do you want to do now? I remember this question. My father asked me that question when I was 22 years old. What do you want to do now? And I said, I remember, I want to be happy. And he looked at me and he said, what makes you so special? You know, the truth is, that's what you want. That's what we all want. The point of coming to this great university, to prepare yourself for the world, isn't just to make money. It isn't just to be successful in material terms. It's to build your life in a way that serves others and can make you happy. Today, I write books about happiness. And I want to take my 15 minutes in your life to give you a couple of ideas on how to find it and tell you what I wish I had known when I was 22 years old. I'm going to give you two pieces of advice. The truth is, you get two pieces of advice every day right now. Number one is to make prudent choices and don't take crazy risks. The second piece of advice is to find your strengths and to rely on them. What I'm going to tell you right now is that that's bad advice. I'm going to tell you to do just the opposite. Lesson number one, for you to use the rest of your life to be the happiest person possible. Take more risk. You know, that's not what you typically hear. That sounds wrong. Here's what I want you to understand. Now, as a researcher, as a social scientist, there's a study that I recently saw that captured my imagination. It was by a great economist who teaches at the University of Chicago. His name is Stephen Levitt. If you've ever heard the name, it's because he wrote a big best-selling book called Freakonomics. And his new study asks this question: how do people make the hardest decisions in their lives? How do they fix it when they don't know what to do? Now, if I look at my data right, a third of you are struggling with a major decision. It's not bad. Maybe it's two good possibilities. Do I do this or this? Where yes is scary and no is to do what you've always been doing. Now, 75% of the time, people say no to hard decisions. Why? Because usually they don't make the decisions and time runs out. Should you say yes more or no more when you have a major decision? Maybe it's about going to graduate school. Maybe it's about a relationship. Maybe it's about something having to do with a job. Do we say yes too much or no too much? This is what this economist was trying to figure out. So he put together a major research study, and he asked people all over the country to let him make the biggest decisions in their lives with the flip of a coin. Now, this is crazy, isn't it? 22,000 people signed up for his. They were in such pain about making a decision that 22,000 people said, I'm going to let an economics professor make the biggest decision in my life with a flip of a coin. Well, here's the twist in this. Half the people got yes, do whatever it is that's on your mind. The scary thing. Half said, no, you got tails. Stay with what you've got. And then he went back a year later to see who was happier, the yeses or the nos. Now, the way that you measure happiness is that 1 is misery and 10 is bliss. What's your number? Everybody's got a number. It's pretty constant throughout your life, as a matter of fact. And so he asked before the experiment, and then a year after they assigned the yeses and nos, he asked again. And what did he find? The yeses were 1 entire digit happier than the nos. This is a big finding. 75% of the time, people say no to the big, scary decisions in their life, but you should say yes. Now, this is news that you can use because this is you. This is you going forward. And I'm not, by the way, thinking I'm urging you to take a lot of risk to start a business, to reach for the stars professionally. That's good. Do that. Here's what I'm really talking about. I'm asking you to take a risk with your heart and the relationships that you have with other people. See, here's what the world tells you in 2018. Hold yourself apart. Don't get married too young. Don't tie yourself down. Keep your options open. That, my friends, is not good advice. What you need to do is to take the risk with the love that is the most important thing in your life. You know, I work in Washington, D.C. I have an institution that's full of hundreds of young people, people under 30. And I get to know them really well. And I have to tell you that Washington, D.C. is the world's most dysfunctional dating market. It's terrible. And so I'll meet these young guys, 28, 29 years old, and they'll be telling, I'll say, how are things going? And they'll say, fine. I say, are you still dating that girl? And they'll say, yeah. I'll say, how long have you been going out? And they'll say, 8 years. And then they'll ask me, what do you think I ought to do? And I got the data. I say, I think you should go back to your apartment and put on the music for a little while, get your courage up. Then I think you should go over to her place, say yes to your heart, and get down on one knee, and hope she says yes to you. Now, there's something like that in your life, and if it's not right now, it's going to come soon. When it comes to love, when it comes to your heart, say yes, even if it's scary. Take more risk. That's lesson number 1. Lesson number 2, you always hear that you should play to your strengths. That's what you've been doing in college, by the way. You've been majoring in something that you're good at, that you like, that you're passionate about. Thank you. My hood was errant. Do what you're good at. Play to your strengths. Your mother taught you that. Your professors taught you that. I want to give you different advice. Each of you has a weakness. Each of you is embarrassed about something. Each of you is really bad at something. You need that. Why? Because the greatest strength that you have is connecting to other people, and you can't connect to other people with your strengths. You can only connect to other people with your weaknesses. I want you to think about it, and I want you to use it going forward. See, you're privileged as of today. You're college graduates from this great institution. You can't relate to other people when you say about your wonderful college degree and your high-paying job. You can only relate to other people with your weaknesses. Let me tell you about how a happy life requires weaknesses. A happy life requires connections with other people, friends, neighbors, people who will lead you. Every major religion understands that you connect to other people with the things about which you're embarrassed. 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 10. When I'm weak, then I'm strong. That's what St. Paul said. Is that just rhetoric? I never quite believed this, but then I learned. So it's not good enough for me to tell you to use your weakness. Let me tell you how I use mine. It is incredible to me that I stand up at this great university and give a commencement address. I do not have a strong academic background. You know, when I was 19 years old, I dropped out of college. Dropped out, kicked out, splitting hairs. And I had to make a living. So when I went on the road doing the one thing I knew how to do, I was a musician. I played classical music, barely making my rent, traveling around. I played jazz with a guitar player named Charlie Bird for a couple of years. Then I wound up in the Barcelona Symphony Orchestra. I went there not because of the job, I went there because I met a girl who lived in Barcelona. I was chasing her there, and I wanted to try to convince her to marry me. That was lesson 1, if you remember. When I was in Barcelona, I was 28 years old. You know what was bugging me? Was not that I didn't have a college degree, but that I had dropped out and failed. That bothered me. I got nothing against not going to college. There's nothing wrong with not going to college. But for me, the fact that I had failed just gnawed at me. So I said, maybe I can try again. Problem, I didn't have any money, and I didn't really live any place. So I asked one of my friends who said, you should go to correspondence school. What's that? You get your degree through the mail. You can fax your assignments in. This is the 90s. You can fax your assignment in. And so I did a little bit of research, and I found a wonderful institution in Trenton, New Jersey called Thomas Edison State College, which was an institution of higher learning dedicated to adults who needed a second chance. Correspondence was just one of the ways that you could do your degree, but I was living in Spain. So I signed up for correspondence courses, and I gotta tell you, I loved it. I killed it in correspondence school. I got straight A's. I became an economics student, and I got to tell you, it completely captured my imagination. I had never had a better experience. So I was graduating. I graduated a month before my 30th birthday. You know what my commencement was? It was putting on my slippers and walking out to my mailbox and getting my degree. And I got back in, and I was married already, and talked to my wife, Esther, and I said, what should I do next? Because I want to learn more. This has been a great experience. She said, I don't know, because my wife graduated from high school when she was 29. So I wrote to one of my correspondence school professors, a guy in Colorado who was retired, and I said, what do I do next? And he wrote back to me, and he said, I think you should get your PhD. And now that was crazy. PhD? So I wrote back to him and said, where should I do it? And he wrote back and he said, you should do it at Harvard University. That filled me with confidence that I'd never had in my life. That filled me with a sense of possibility, that somebody had that kind of belief that I could do it. So you know what I did? I wrote an application to Harvard University to do my PhD. And I did it with a sense of love and affection. I wrote my essays and I sent in my transcripts, and I got rejected in 1 week. It was just one word, no. Turns out that a 30-year-old college dropout French horn player is not Harvard's core demographic. And I didn't know what to do. And so I said to my wife, I'm going to call him up and see how close I came. And my wife said, you're an idiot. But I did it. I called him up, and because I needed more information. I got this nice lady in the admissions office, and I said, I just got rejected from your PhD program in economics. She said, I'm sorry. And I said, no, it's fine. I just need to know, how close did I come? She puts down the phone, and I can hear rustling of papers and cabinets closing and opening, and she comes back 2 minutes later. She says, not close. And now I'm in a panic. I'm bargaining. I'm like, was I in the top half? And she says, no, and it was terrible. So I made a plan to try someplace else, and I got rejected, and I tried someplace else, and I got rejected, and I finally found a graduate school that wasn't paying close attention, and I got in. And I never told anybody. And through my graduate school experience, people would say, where'd you do your undergraduate? And I wish I could have said Jacksonville University. Instead, I said, University. And then I finished my doctorate, and I went and I took a teaching job, and then I traded up to a better university, and I was at Syracuse, which in public policy is a very good school. And all of my friends, all of my colleagues, they went to Harvard. And they would ask me, and I would change the subject. I didn't lie. It was on my CV, and it sounds legit, and nobody ever checked. And I kept it a secret. I was mortified. I was embarrassed by that. I know I shouldn't have been. And then in 2008, my life changed because I went to Washington, D.C. to be the president of this think tank that I run now, the American Enterprise Institute, which is an academic think tank. It's full of professors. It's full of Harvard men and women. And I was embarrassed. You know what I was afraid of? That the Washington Post was going to figure out that I was a fraud and a patsy and a loser, and they were going to write a big expose, and it was going to be embarrassing. And so I kept it a secret. Here's what happened. I hired a guy to go do research for us on higher education. And higher education is in a big crisis today. I don't have to tell you. You're so lucky to be at this university where you don't have to spend $1 billion to get your college degree. I know it's expensive, but it's not as expensive. Where you don't have to worry, fewer people are in debt, and they welcome all different points of view. Look, college in general in America is in a big crisis. So I hired this guy. This guy was great. He got his PhD at Berkeley. He went to Dartmouth. He was an elite guy. And I said, I want you to write an expose about higher ed. And he said, great. I said, what are you going to write it on? He said, I've always wanted to write an expose on fly-by-night correspondence schools. So I'm thinking the jig is up. But I don't say anything. I'm being cool because maybe nothing happens. And a month later, he writes an email to me at night. He says, hey, Arthur, I'm on the Wikipedia site for something called Thomas Edison State College, and they're claiming you're an alum. So you better get that cleared up, dude. And I had to figure out what to do. So I wrote an article about it for the New York Times. I mean, I figured go big or go home. And I called it my cheap, valuable college degree. And in that article, I mentioned that I got my entire college degree, including the books, for $10,000 in today's dollars. And it included a sticker for my car, which I didn't put on my car because I was embarrassed. And if it hadn't been for that degree, I would not have gone to college. And I wouldn't have gone to graduate school, and I wouldn't have had the life that I have. And I'm so grateful for it, because that's what we need more of in America. We need more opportunity in this country for people at the margins of society. And I braced myself for people to say, aha, loser, and that's not what I heard. I started getting email from people who said, I went there too, thank you for writing that. And one lady wrote me an email saying, my son is 31, and 10 years ago he dropped out of college and he's really struggling. And I showed him your article, and I think he's going to sign up. And thank you for giving my son a second chance. And here's what I learned. Look, I've dedicated my life to equal opportunity. I believe in the radical equality of human dignity. And I believe that each one of us should serve people at the periphery of our society. We should look for people at the margins and find a way to lift them up. That is my belief. But there was one thing that truly connects me to people at the margins of society, and I've spent 20 years running away from it. That's terrible. That is practically unforgivable. And today, I would probably still be hiding it were it not the fact that one of my own scholars at my institution outed me. That's not courage. That's cowardice. Don't be me. There is something that you have that will remind you of that. Something that embarrasses you, something that connects you to other people who have a weakness. You need to lift them up. As leaders, they can relate to you if they know what your weakness is as well. I didn't finish the story. One of the people who called me after that article came out was the president of Thomas Edison State College. He asked me if I would give the commencement address at Thomas Edison. And when I was there, it was a group just like you, except older. We were at the Trenton Ice Arena. And there were 700 people crossing the stage, and their families were cheering at this arena. And every single one of them was the first generation to go to college. By the way, how many of you are the first generation in your family to go to college? Congratulations to you. And they got, as they were at Thomas Edison, as they were crossing the stage, each one of them got to do one thing, say their name and one short thing, and then off, because it didn't want it to take all day. And there's one lady that I remember. I was sitting up sort of where I'm sitting here. I was wearing this very robe. And this one lady, she stops and she says her name. And then she says, for this moment, I want to thank my 5 children and the living God. And I thought, that's my hero. That's a startup life. That's a person who had weakness and turned it into strength. And that's somebody I want to be able to connect to for the rest of my life. My friends, your assignment as you leave today, a graduate of this great university, is to ask yourself 2 questions. Number 1, is my heart open to risk? Am I ready to be a life entrepreneur? Second, what's my weakness? What have I been hiding and running away from? How can I use it to connect to others, to help them, and to help make me a full and happy person? Take your education, answer the questions to these, answer these questions, and let me tell you, you'll be happy, and nothing can stop you. Good luck. God bless you, and congratulations.